Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It's quite an event. Maya's show. Maya's show. It's a great event. Someone's been elevated to the post of Lord Brahma. Someone's degraded to a worm in stool. Alright, so I'm going to speak this evening about, what should I speak about? I should speak about Krishna?
Krishna? Yes. Maya.
Or Maya?
Maya.
Krishna.
Both. Please both.
I'm going to speak about America. That's Maya. Who said that? That's Maya? Well, that's the whole point. America is Maya. You're not in Maya, right? If you know that America's Maya, that means you're not in Maya. Means you're not in America. But you are in America. And it's the job of devotees to make devotees in America to make America Krishna conscious. So that's why I want to talk about America. I don't want to talk about the economic situation, the political situation, the military situation, although I might touch on that tangentially. Why should we discuss about America when we know about Krishna? And we're not the body, we don't intrinsically have anything to do with this place, or when we say this place, that means America, it means the world, the earth planet, the whole material world. But we should consider, as Srila Prabhupada considered, Srila Prabhupada, while teaching us that we are not the body, he often spoke about America, actually. Srila Prabhupada was fully self-realized, perfect, pure devotee, fully cognizant that we are not the body. At the same time, he was a pragmatic preacher of Krishna consciousness. And although Srila Prabhupada had no other subject but Krishna, he spoke in various ways for the purpose of bringing people to Krishna consciousness. And as a pragmatic preacher, he often appealed to the patriotic spirit, which is Maya, to enthuse people to engage that patriotic spirit in a fully spiritual purpose. When Srila Prabhupada was in England, he was talking to, I believe it was one of the lords. He spoke to many big people. And he said that you used to have a great empire, and you can have it again, if you just take a little advice from me. So he often spoke of America, how America is dominating the world, and how if people in America take to Krishna consciousness, then the whole world will follow suit. As a pragmatic acharya, a preacher of Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada came to America, and he said that others, they always sort of going to Britain first, but I was looking at America, because that's pragmatic, isn't it, or strategic, that the most prominent country, if that becomes Krishna conscious, then others will follow, just like America is grossly materialistic, and the whole world is following. And the culture or anti-culture or lack of culture or whatever it is of America. Or when we say America, we say that means generally the Western world, but particularly trends are hatched in America and in Britain also and other places, but particularly in America. So Srila Prabhupada appealed to the American spirit. In India, Srila Prabhupada brought American disciples and told them that what is the use of your being American if you can't do something wonderful for Krishna? So he appealed to the patriotic spirit. That even that can be Krishnaized. That let us do something for Krishna. Let us make our countrymen and women, you have to say, Krishna conscious. And naturally, if you live here, then take to devotional service, then some feeling of compassion must be there, seeing the people, thinking that they're American, and in this way committing themselves to repeated birth and death. So Srila Prabhupada, when he first came to America, he studied the culture to see how to present Krishna consciousness. And that should be an ongoing task of devotees preaching Krishna consciousness. Not that they have to be extremely clued into all the goings on, read the whole newspaper every day, but to preach Krishna consciousness means, first of all, to communicate with people at a level they're at, and to try to bring them up from that level to the level of understanding that we are all pure spirit souls, all parts and parcels of Krishna, meant to serve Krishna. So communication means we have to have some understanding of people's psychology and the present cultural trends. So I want to spend a few minutes giving what I see as present cultural trends in America, and how, as preachers of Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken not in a pristine, idyllic situation which you might think suitable for philosophy, but in probably the most unlikely situation for speaking philosophy, just before a battle was about to take place. So that demonstrates that philosophy of life is to be enacted in life. It's not, a philosophy is not something for people sitting in caves only. It's for everyone, but it's for practical life also. So what are the trends in modern American life and American culture? The trends, they're inevitably, they are driven by various worldviews or perspectives of life on how we should live life. One may, and of course I'm speaking as an outsider here. I don't live in America, and nevertheless, America is undoubtedly the most featured country in the news media throughout the world. Of course, in India, for instance, the news is mostly about India, but when it comes to international news, America will be featured the most, because America is, at the present time, the most powerful and influential country in the world. Powerful still economically, somehow or other, and militarily, no doubt about it, politically, yeah. So one prominent trend that we see in modern American culture, which is directly of interest to devotees who want to preach the message of Bhagavad Gita, is the cultural divide, on one hand, between fundamentalist religion, which Christianity, there are hardcore fundamentalists, and there are less so. We don't see them so much in this part of America, but in other parts, definitely Christianity particularly of a evangelical type, is very influential in American culture, no doubt, which we don't see much in other countries actually. Christianity is there, but the evangelical type, what is this? Believe or burn. This type is prominent in America, which is surprising considering that, well, people are supposed to get an education here, and it doesn't seem to be very intelligent, this kind of believe or burn religion. And probably as a result of that, or of course when we speak about philosophical and cultural trends, there has to be much generalization and simplification. But a response to that is rejection of religion in the form of hardcore scientific atheism. Okay, we'll get to that a little later. I'm not deliberately trying to talk here. Is this some sign that I should be talking about other things? So a reaction, one reaction is this trend to be people talking about, I'm spiritual but not religious. And New Age and impersonalist, the rise of Buddhism, what they call Buddhism, and do it yourself, feel your own way to spirituality. Read a book here, read a book there, feel something, and just feel yourself to be spiritual. Of course, there's a lot of difference between feeling spiritual and being spiritual, and that is, or even considering oneself to be religious and actually being religious, and that is the contribution of the Krishna consciousness movement. We have science pitted against religion, and some scientists have now put themselves on the side of religion with the intelligent design. But generally still, religion and science are considered different. But Srila Prabhupada always presented Krishna consciousness as a scientific approach. And that wasn't just something he made up as a pragmatic preaching tool, but the very word Vijnana, which in modern Indian languages is the word used for science, although it has a much broader, or various broad meanings. The word Vijnana is very common. It comes up several times in Bhagavad Gita, and in important contexts, and particularly in Srimad Bhagavatam. About the Bhagavatam, it's stated within the Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate, that this knowledge or science, Vijnana means science, of Krishna consciousness, Bhagavat Tattva, knowledge of the existence or the reality, the actual being of God and everything in relation to Him. By understanding that, one becomes free from all material association, one becomes liberated from the material world. So this feel-good, vague spiritualism on one hand, and the very definite fundamentalism on the other hand, that it's this way and only this way, and you're either in or you're out. You either believe or you either bathe yourself in the blood of Jesus, whatever that means. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to mean, or you burn in hell forever. Of course, it sounds pretty offensive to bathe yourself in the blood of Jesus, but anyway, it's a horrible idea, but anyway, whatever it is, you better believe it, otherwise you burn in hell forever.
Yeah.
So, alright. So, there's also the advent of multiculturalism as it's maybe a pragmatic approach to the melting pot that never really properly melted. America was supposed to be a melting pot of civilizations, but nevertheless we find that there are African Americans, Chinese Americans, Vietnamese Americans, Indian Americans, and just Americans, Jewish Americans, and Americans, which means wasps, I guess, but they're just called Americans, and everyone else is called a Chinese American, a Vietnamese American, or something like that. So the melting pot didn't really melt fully, so we didn't all merge into various shades of brown or light brown. Hispanic American, sorry about that, didn't mean to leave you out. I wasn't discriminating here, just being as multicultural as I can. So the idea of multiculturalism, to respect all cultures, and take what's good in all of them. So this idea has come up, which is another stupid idea actually, because it's not that all culture. You can't say that the culture of a people, like in some tribes in Africa, have languages of only 300 words. And we can't say that that's on the same cultural level as even American culture, for that matter. What to speak of highly developed culture, which means Vedic culture, actually. So, anyway, the idea that there should be tolerance, the world has seen too much intolerance. This is a trend which has, there's the history of ideas. There's one study, at least in one university in Sweden, I know they teach this, and it may be in others also. So they're considering the past, the ugly past, how Protestants used to burn Catholics at the stake, and Catholics used to burn Protestants at the stake, and when they got a little tired of doing that, sometimes they hung, drew and quartered them, and other various nasty ways of killing and torturing, and that continued with the Holocaust, and it goes on and on and on with there's so many. There's a Holocaust, and then after that there was the Pol Pot in Kampuchea, was just as nasty, Mao Zedong and Stalin, and they all killed plenty of people. So the idea is, let's be nice and tolerate each other, and let's not kill each other. Make love, not war, was the slogan of the 60s. So let's all be nice to each other and tolerate each other, which is a good sentiment. It's definitely better than let's kill everyone else who we don't like. America, there was Americans in the, at least up to the 60s or 70s. As I was growing up in my native merry England, we used to hear of the ugly American. Have you heard of the ugly American? You never heard of the ugly American? There's Americans used to come on holiday to countries like Britain and talk loud, far too loud, even when they weren't drunk. And generally act in a condescending manner. Gee, the cars are so small here. And so on. Well, in America we don't do things like that. And so on. And I it must have been 1986 in Gatwick Airport, which is London's second biggest airport, as we were, myself and Prabhu Swami were about to board the plane for communist Russia. It was still heavy.
Still USSR.
Yeah, it was still the USSR, and it was heavy. Just before they lightened up, they got more heavy. So anyway, the whole concourse was, people, there was like a buzz of people talking. All of a sudden, there was loud American voice of obviously in America. Could have been a Canadian, I guess. And Canadian. And he was shouting at his wife presumably it was his wife, using the most foul language. But now when I come to America, at least in America, I find that many people are very nice and polite and at least superficially friendly, and they say good morning to you when you walk in the morning. You want to chant your japa, and the people coming past every few minutes saying good morning. So that it seems that there's been a deliberate attempt to change and be nice, and there are new age gurus, and maybe it all began with this how to make friends and exploit people, and influence people. Sorry, that book. How to make friends and subtly exploit them. Make them think that you're their friend when actually you're making a buck out of them. Okay. So it began with that, and then there are all books like Think and Grow Rich, and then it became more sophisticated with the 7 habits of highly exploitive. What is it? Highly successful people. The 7, it's like you win, I win, but I'm going to make sure I'll win more than you. And be nice, be good. This idea that if you're nice, well, if things work out, it's better to be nice to people because it's in your own self-interest to be. That's the underlying message, right? That if you're nice to people, then it's good. It's in your own self-interest. And so people are trying to be nice to each other. And at least superficially, like in England. I know we grew up in a culture where, among a certain class of people, not everyone, but in general, it's be nice, be polite, say please, thank you. Of course, having grown up in that culture, Americans can say, oh, how polite the people are. They always say, please. If you're British, you know that according to the intonation of the voice, the word thank you can mean get out of here, you jerk, or similar. There's similar unstated but understood subtleties. The culture is more subtle, but it's the same thing, just a better veneer, that's all. So anyway, at least people are trying to be nice and friendly, some of them, and I guess not everyone. There's also the other trends, other cultural trends, making a quick survey here. We want to get on to Krishna as soon as possible. Other cultural trends, the rise of vegetarianism, which is probably fueled more by the understanding that you're likely to get serious diseases if you're not a vegetarian, more than compassion and goodwill to all, what is that? All creatures great and small. But there's also this PETA organization which is actively campaigning for animal rights, which is a good trend. Due, I would say, largely to the widespread distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books and the influence of the Krishna conscious movement. I mean, even though our movement's not doing nearly as well as we had hoped it to be doing, nevertheless, there have been literally millions of Srila Prabhupada's books distributed in this country, and no doubt that is having an effect. One of them, which is largely contributed, I would say, to the widespread awareness of, and by many belief in, the laws of karma, even though people don't have a very clear idea of what it is, but at least they have some idea of what it is. Whereas a generation, and definitely 2 generations ago, the word karma wasn't even known, and the concepts were not socially acceptable to, which means reincarnation. So reincarnation, that was considered the subject matter for a few crackpots. But now it's widely, at least conceptually, many people know about what it is, and many people, to a greater or lesser extent, have some kind of belief in it. So that's a major change in the whole outlook. Of course, they may not have a very clear idea, but it is a major change in the culture. Some years ago, when I was in Bangladesh, devotee came from England, and they brought with them the Sunday supplement of the Telegraph newspaper, Sunday Telegraph, which is the most conservative newspaper in Britain. And on that, the main feature was about how the culture of Britain is changing. It was back to the vegetarianism point. How Britain, which used to pride itself on being a nation of beef eaters, is rapidly turning. And for years, it's been the fastest growing nation of vegetarians in Europe. So, and they're noting that this is a major cultural change. So, culture, and there are many other trends, feminism, acceptance of homosexuality, and so on. So, there's a brief overview of the what I see to be a very actually confused situation. Very confused. I see the world is very confused, and maybe America more than any other country. It seems to me to be highly confused. Maybe just because of the sheer size of the country, and there's so many different cultures coming together. It's so many different outlooks, and the whole idea of free speech just makes everyone's blabbing on about something or other, and the fact that people are confused is seen in the prevalence of substance abuse, alcoholism, broken homes, if there are any homes in the first place, divorce, and all these kind of things. It just means that people are confused, what their direction is. Although a few generations ago people used to trust and revere their political leaders, now increasingly there's a sense of hopelessness, that whoever's in, it's not going to help us, and they don't have our self-interest at heart, that they're just part of a big machine to exploit us, and there's nothing much we can do about it. So there's confusion. I see confusion, bordering on despair with many people, meaninglessness, which is maybe one reason why this fundamental Christianity is popular, because this idea of being spiritual without being religious, you don't get any direction, and just being materialistic, agnostic, that also leads an inner sense of meaninglessness or lack of direction. So it's maybe one reason why this fundamental Christianity is popular, because people they get a direction, and then they're told, okay, live your life like this and everything will be okay. And everyone in the fundamentalist camp seems to smile with a big smile and be confident that Jesus has saved them, and it's attractive. But intellectually, if we examine, it's shallow, which is again why people on the other hand are rejecting that. Intellectually shallow means anyway, I don't want to get into the whole thing of bashing Christianity, but any form of Orthodox Christianity, the whole idea that we're all the suffering in this world is caused because a long time ago someone ate an apple, and then But never mind, God came and someone killed him. He was dead for 3 days, and they killed God. And anyway, he came back to life again. So I mean, it's just intellectually defunct, or if there was just it doesn't cannot appeal to any intelligent person. And I'm quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakur on that. This theology so cannot appeal to any intelligent person. Just one other point. Who's better, Democrats or Republicans?
Republicans.
Republicans, okay, that's what you said. Well, there are some devotees who say that, because they say, well, at least they're against abortion, they're for family values, but then some vote Democrat, because they think, well, you know, if these Republicans are associated with fundamental Christianity, if they get their way, they won't even at least the Democrats will allow us to exist. But with the Republicans, you can't be sure. They may just crush us if they become so powerful. And there are devotees who are committed Republicans, they vote Republican, and some who vote Democrat. Srila Prabhupada wrote in a purport getting to that, in the 4th canto of Bhagavatam, that Krishna conscious people should not vote for leaders unless they should refuse to vote unless they are Krishna conscious. So, which way should we vote? None of these ways. That's right from Prabhupada's books. There's a very good article in Back to Godhead some years ago by Sureshwar Prabhu, who always writes very original and lively articles with an underlying very heavy message. He has this amazing knack of doing that. So he was in Gitanagari farm at that time, and he wrote about how he went to discuss who to vote for with the cows. And the cows, they were all upset. They said, well, it doesn't matter who they are, Democrat, Republican, who's going to stop killing us? Why are you going to vote for anyone who's going to kill us? So that's a very good point. We're not Democrats or Republicans. The Democrats have the aura of being good, caring, open-minded, whereas the Republicans have the aura or the image of being real Americans, more American than Uncle Sam, or American to the bone marrow, like this. So, like this, you know, meat eating, smoking, drinking, hardcore Americans. So, and on the other hand, Democrats, you know, very liberal, too liberal, abortion and all this. So how do we analyze all this from the perspective of Bhagavad Gita? There are many verses which may apply to this. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam tayapahrita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhi samadhana vidhiyate. For those who are too attached to material enjoyment and opulence. They're very much attached to these things, which are materialistic civilization in general. So for such persons, their consciousness is deluded, apahrita cetasa. It goes against, we often hear this, I'm acting according to my heart. But if there's the desire for bhoga, material enjoyment, and aishvarya, opulence, wealth, then that goes against our real heart's desire, which is to love Krishna. So such persons, they cannot be fixed. They must be confused. The more material desire there is, then definitely the more confusion must be there. Because hoya mayar das kari nana abhilas. When we become the servant of Maya, which is also a word which is entering the modern lexicon. Then we have many desires, and these desires, they conflict with each other, so we become confused. Sometimes we think, well, I want to be good, and sometimes we think, I want to be bad. Sometimes we think, well, I'd like to live peacefully, and sometimes we think, well, I'd like to live an exciting life, and these, so many desires, and they conflict with each other, and we cannot fulfill them. Unfulfilled desire leads to frustration. This is all analyzed in Bhagavad Gita. How frustration, and then it leads ultimately to madness. And that's the condition of the whole material world. But especially when the Rajoguna, the mode of passion, becomes intense, then this condition of actually insanity, which we see at the present time, it becomes prominent, that people live in such an unnecessarily stressed out manner. I mean, even in San Diego, it may seem like kind of relaxed compared to New York City or Los Angeles, but it's a very artificial society, very artificial way of life, with the goal of, or the center is sense gratification, to indulge the senses at a much higher level than is normal in traditional societies. So naturally the mental imbalance must be there, because we're just burning up our sense gratificatory ability by pushing the adrenaline to all more and more and more till you get burned out. And that's what happens. So then again, take some more intoxication, just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing yourself to enjoy. Extremely unnatural way of life. People cannot imagine what it means to live just in a very simple and relaxed manner. You can't live a simple manner. I remember I went in a devotee's house, and they just built a house and said, and in their estimation it was very simple. And I lived years in Bangladesh, and at that time there was I didn't see any electrical appliances for weeks on end. There was no electricity, for instance. So you can maybe imagine what that means. Actually you can't unless you live in that atmosphere. What it means to live. Just not having electricity makes everything so much more simple. And the whole, which is why Srila Prabhupada said our Prabhupada is not to have electricity, because once you have, then there's no end to all the different things, and then the complexity, life becomes so much more complex. So yeah, you have to go throw a bucket down the well, pull it up, or walk to the river to take a bath, and things like that. Go in the field to pass. So, but to get these conveniences, how much we have to struggle and have a stressed out life. So, we're talking about a general overview. And the society is degrading day by day. What was that verse you were saying? Tataschanu dinam dharma satyam shocham shamadaya kalena balina rajan nangshant ayor balang smritihi. People say day by day things are going down, right? Well, that's true. That was written 5,000 years ago in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That thereafter, that means after the onset of Kali Yuga, day by day, dharma, which means religion, but it means also morality and the whole sense of living properly. It diminishes day by day. Tataschanu satyam, truthfulness, cleanliness, compassion, tolerance, bodily strength and the power of memory, these decrease day by day, so that we can see within a generation how much human society is becoming degraded, and whole moral outlooks change completely. Just like there was a time in the late 19th, I'm talking about the late 19th century, contraception was considered, here in America, was considered absolutely wrong by almost everyone. Christians were completely against it. But gradually they said, well, okay. And now they recommend it. Now you have... so like this, the whole morality can change. You say, well, the whole idea that women can have children outside marriage was, up to a short time ago, considered something very wrong, and a kalanka, what's that? A scar? What's the word? A blot on the whole family. But then people don't even live in families anyway, and then it's just become considered normal and just completely normal. Nothing wrong with it at all. So I'm just giving this as an example of how moral values change, world views change. And things that now we're seeing, things that would have been considered unthinkable even a short time ago, they're coming. I'm talking, specifically having in mind the idea of homosexual couples or raising children. So that there could be homosexual couples even tolerated in society, was considered impossible, and now that they can raise children and say, well, we have the right to have children. Of course, the children, because we also have the right of children to have biological parents. That could also be considered. Anyway, I'm just saying that there's the attitudes change. There was a time, of course this was quite a long time ago, when in Christianity women did not have souls. Yeah, they didn't have souls, and they were granted souls by one of the popes some time ago. I don't know what happened to all of them.
It's a great religion.
Oh yeah, I don't know what happened to all of them before that. Maybe maybe there'll be a sexual imbalance in heaven because all the women before that, well, they died and that was it, finished, because they didn't have souls. Maybe the Pope could give them, retroactively give them souls. But anyway, they officially didn't have them. And then they got the vote, and then they got equal rights, so they too can go to Iraq and blast people to pieces. So the ultimate limit of femininity, or if there's any such word. So, like this, there's the idea that we got it right. We got it right. In the past, everything was all wrong, but now we got it right. You see, that now we have equal rights for everyone, tolerance toward everyone, we treat all religions equally. There's the idea that the modern society is the zenith. If you look back at the past, there was so much inequality. Now everyone's equal and everything's great. Of course, if we actually look at this society, it's a complete mess in so many ways. I mean, a society in which, just a few years ago I came to America and I heard the word Prozac. Someone told me, I want Prozac, and then someone else told me, what's this word Prozac? I never heard of it. It's a household word in America. It's an you all know what it is, I don't have to tell you. I didn't know what it was, but if the name of an antidepressant drug is a household word, then there's something wrong. although some people may disagree, if many children don't grow up with their biological parents, many, I mean a large percentage, with both of them, and both of them are alive, but their biological parents live separately, they're divorced, there's something wrong. If even one child pulls out a gun and kills well, you could say that's an odd case, but when it happens repeatedly, something seriously wrong there. When at schools children have to be searched for weapons, there's something wrong. When kids, even as soon as they hit puberty or maybe even before, are engaging in sexual activities, it's serious, taking drugs and so on. Obviously, it's a very, very sick society. So, devotees, we are presenting not just what people would call a religion, but a whole way of life in which the understanding and the value system doesn't change. People think, well, you have a right to your own opinion, but in Krishna consciousness we say it's better to know what is God's opinion of what is best for us and to act accordingly. So we do offer a clear understanding, but at the same time it's scientific understanding, and it's not that one size fits all, but there are different directives for different people according to their psychophysical propensities. The idea of artificially making everyone equal, it's artificial, because there are different levels of intelligence, people have different propensities and desires, so to try to make everyone the same is it doesn't work, and it results in people being unhappy. We see that how many people can actually say in the modern age that they're satisfied, and what they do most of the time for their livelihood, they actually like their job and they like the people they're living with and working with. Most people, no. Most people, if you remove their paycheck, they're not going to work anymore. You think, well, that's an obvious thing. But in Vedic society, actually, there is no paycheck for anyone. You don't get paid. Well, for most people. Just like the barber, the village barber, he'll come and shave you, and you don't pay him. That's what he does. And after the harvest, you give him a bag of rice, and at festivals, a marriage or something, give him some cloth. Everyone's looked after. But it's not like for every single little thing you do, you have to get paid for it. People have their duty to do what the potter makes pots, the barber shaves people, like this. Everyone has their job to do. And some people are of a higher status and others are of a lower status, and that's it's not that one's trying to pull down the other according to their karmic situation. One is born in a certain kind of family and has that kind of situation, but the center is God consciousness. Of course, this is a very, very foreign concept in the Western world, to introduce this idea of a stratified society. But Srila Prabhupada he was very much wanted to do that. A stratified society based on knowledge of the actual underlying principles of human society. That we are in a foreign atmosphere. We don't belong in this material world. Therefore, in the human life, having attained human birth, we should cultivate those values which lead us to that consciousness which will satisfy us in this life and liberate us from birth and death and lead us to Krishna, who is all bliss. So the society is to be based on these principles. So Srila Prabhupada preached his principles of preaching, his main principles of preaching, that we are not the body, Therefore, life should not be lived for sense gratification. We are controlled, even though we might like to think that we're free, and we have rights to do whatever we like, but we are controlled by material nature controls us. We have, however much we take antioxidants and vitamin E and do yoga, we still grow old and die. We can't demand the right to live forever. We don't have a right. Well, actually we do. That's why we try to live. We try to go on living, but the material world is set up in such a way that we have to die, we have to grow old, we have to suffer diseases. So Krishna consciousness gives that knowledge by which we can become, or which we do become, free from birth and death. So it is a very good time for introducing this science of Krishna consciousness, a completely different way of looking at the world, which at the same time is practical and philosophically tenable, and it combines the spiritualism of those who like to be spiritual, to feel spiritual, with the theism of those who seek the shelter of a kind and loving God, with scientific knowledge of all facets of human culture. And in Vedic culture, all sciences are there. All sciences. So it's actually a very good time to preach Krishna consciousness. We may think that, well, our movement's not that well known, but there is great scope. It does seem strange to many people, but that's maybe because of the whole atmosphere that's produced by the highly sense gratificatory society. But if we can get our message out there, along with the millions of other messages getting out there, then this was Srila Prabhupada's hope, that he personally met many of the intellectuals in the Western world, and he wanted his books distributed, and he especially wanted them distributed in the universities, because Srila Prabhupada's idea was that if people are presented with this philosophical understanding, then persons who are somewhat sober kind of begin to appreciate that this is a substantial message. I mean, just take the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yaton Vyaditarataschatesh Pavijnaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Mohyanti Yat Suryaha Tejo Vari Yata Mridang Yata Vinmayo Yatra Sargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadani Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Gimahi. Does anyone know the translation in the book? I mean, I can explain it, but yeah. So I offer my obeisances to Vasudev, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, Vasudev, by whom the creation, maintenance and destruction of this material world is effected. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. It was he who at the time of creation imparted Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji. Prabhupada says it. Brahmaji. Tenya Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavi. And by him, even the great controllers of the universe are bewildered. That illusion acts just like water is seen on fire or land is seen on water. He is beyond the material creation, which is affected of the three modes of material nature, or in the three phases of creation, maintenance and destruction. He is situated beyond illusion in his own abode, his own dham, which is forever free from the illusion which is like that of a magician. This material world bewilders us like that, like a magician can bewilder. So he's eternally free of that. He is this supreme, ultimate reality, and it is he who we should meditate upon. So even this first, just see this first verse. If anyone reads this, they cannot but be impressed that this is a substantial description of the supreme absolute reality. And in his introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes that the concept of God and the concept of the absolute truth are not on the same level, and he shows how Srimad Bhagavatam brings these together. So this is perfect theology, perfect spiritualism, perfect knowledge of all that be. Of course, everyone will say ours is the best, but if we are actually to have comparative religion, then clearly there is no system that is consistent, comprehensive, and meaningful as that given in the books of Srila Prabhupada. So it is, and Srila Prabhupada has also given us a practical way of life for purification. So really, we have to get out there and live the message and convey it to others. It's not easy being Krishna conscious in the modern world, in which the atmosphere, America is Maya, we have heard. The atmosphere of indulging in the senses is very strong, and that attraction is very strong. We can very easily get caught in that. But if we remain strong by these spiritual practices of Krishna consciousness, then we experience a higher pleasure by which we can remain aloof from being sucked in to that which is clearly against our own self-interest. And everyone can do it. Everyone should do it for their own best self-interest. So, actually it's a very good time for preaching Krishna, for spreading Krishna, and it's very much necessary also. The whole human society is suffering so much just for lack of this knowledge. And we are fortunate to have that. So, that's my suggestion. Let's do whatever is required within our capacity to bring this message to others and bring Krishna consciousness to others. We'll have to ourselves be Krishna conscious to do that. It's not just a matter of making propaganda, and we won't even want to do so unless we are experiencing the taste of Krishna consciousness, which comes from seriously practicing Krishna consciousness. But if we have that, then definitely we'll want to share that with others, and it can be shared with others in various ways, by distributing prasad, holding festivals, and as we see here in San Diego, by making programs to introduce people to Krishna consciousness so that they gradually feel that, I want to do this also, I want to be like that. I want to have the happiness that these people are experiencing. So we really, of course, as I say, everyone will say they've got the best way, but even if we examine neutrally or subjectively, really there's no understanding of the world and of God and of everything like that which we receive from the Vedic knowledge given by Srila Prabhupada. There's no way of life as pure as this. Pure food, pure attitude toward others, non-exploitive attitude, very beautiful way of life, with beautiful Radha and Krishna to worship, joyful process of chanting the holy names and dancing and living simply, Everything about Krishna consciousness is very nice. It requires that we make some effort. We have to rise early in the morning, for instance, which is one reason why I should stop this lecture fairly soon. Because practically speaking, we do require a certain amount of rest also. But yeah, everything about Krishna consciousness is, in every aspect, is superlatively better than anything else that there is. So in this confused and increasingly desperate American society, the welfare work of helping others by bringing others to Krishna consciousness, I know you're doing it, all of you, but I'm just suggesting that everyone follow the example of Srila Prabhupada to do whatever they can, as much as they can, within their capacity to spread Krishna consciousness to others. Okay, I'll finish there. Hare Krishna. Yes, you have a question.
As the world is becoming more and more degraded and attached to sense gratifying.
Yes, the world certainly is becoming more and more degraded and attached to sense gratification.
How do we break through to people then when we're preaching?
How do we break through?
Yeah.
Well, the breakthrough doesn't usually come right in the beginning. If we think we're going to break everyone immediately, that might be a wrong approach. In the beginning, we want to expose people by publicly chanting, giving them Srila Prabhupada's books, giving them Krishna prasadam, and by exposure to that, then people may themselves begin to think that, well, these people are very happy. They become purified by appreciating the kirtan, by taking prasadam. So the breakthrough, like I said, doesn't usually come immediately, that you just walk up to someone on the street, shake them and tell them Sarvadhaman Parittaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, surrender to Krishna, and they say, yeah, okay. But it's usually a more gradual process. It requires to go on with distributing books, holding festivals, inviting people to our centers, distributing prasadam, going on Harinam, all these things. And then gradually, as people become exposed to that, then they become attracted, because Krishna is attractive.
Yeah. Since Srila Prabhupada's time, perhaps maybe the world, maybe America's changed somewhat.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Yeah, the world is different. India is definitely very different to when, in some ways, to when Srila Prabhupada was president, and America is too. Yeah.
So do we need to make any adjustments on our side?
Make adjustments? Yeah, always we have to adjust, keeping our core principles the same. Srila Prabhupada, in preaching Krishna consciousness, maintained the core principles that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, of chanting the holy names, speaking basic philosophy to people, and that was done also by Srila Prabhupada in the form of books, and holding festivals, distributing prasadam. These are the core principles. Exactly how they're presented in various cultures may change, but the core principles stay the same. And we can't, in the name of adjusting, we can't change Krishna consciousness. If we don't have chanting and prasadam and the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, then it's not Krishna consciousness. So we can't change that. Although the manner of presenting it it's going to be different for different audiences. That's why Srila Prabhupada, for instance, organized the Bhakti Vedanta Institute for presenting, actually in a very, what shall we say, restrained or almost roundabout way, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to scientists, to speak in scientific terms. So and dressed in suits and ties and all this kind of thing. Yeah.
Since I joined in 1978, it seems like we've kind of developed more of a softer sell.
We've developed a softer, too soft in my estimation. Softness is required and firmness is required. Both are required. But if we're only soft, then we become ourselves weak. And I wrote about this in an essay in my book, My Memories of Srila Prabhupada. And that I wrote an essay called On Speaking Strongly in Srila Prabhupada's Service, which I'm just revising that. It's been out of print for a long time. So I'm just revising that. There are certain, in this book that I brought out, Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav, there are certain statements by him that show that overriding the principle of time, place and circumstance is one consideration. But more important than that is to retain clarity and I can't remember the exact quote, but to paraphrase, he said that the duty of a preacher is to present Krishna consciousness in the most unambiguous manner. So there are a lot of quotes, and he was a very direct preacher. A lot of quotes in there. So there sometimes it seems that many times or often devotees think that, well, just if the public somehow or other likes us, that's our job done. But it's not enough that they just kind of, in a very remote kind of way, tolerate us. But rather we want to change the way people live and act and think. And so that requires some surgery also. So.
A little bit of anesthesia.
Yeah, anesthesia might be there also. To use some rough example. Prasadam, yeah.
Smash them in the people.
Or around the other way also. Yes, please.
One of the things we notice in American culture is that people run after the latest fad, and
people run after the latest fashions,
and all
whatever's dictated to them.
Yeah, and everything tends to get commercialized very fast. So all the terms like yoga and kirtan, everything is out
everything there. Becomes commercialized.
It's out there. So people have like
yoga,
people they've already
yoga business, kirtan business.
So it's out there. So in the sense that you talk to people about kirtan, they experience kirtan, they experience yoga, so they think
they've experienced yoga.
So how can we
kirtan.
tell them what we are giving them is not the same thing they've experienced, or how is it?
How can we tell them? We can tell them. Just tell them. Yoga means, just like Prabhupada told, from the very beginning, yoga was popular in America, becoming popular. And Prabhupada, he said that real yoga is Bhakti yoga. What is the meaning of yoga? And out of the lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave, the book, The Perfection of Yoga, and what's the other one? No, there's the other yoga book. The Perfection of Yoga is one, and the Path of Perfection.
Path of Yoga.
Well, now they put two books in one, but there was another one at one time. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada presented it.
Art of Divine Love.
No, that's taken from his lectures. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada spoke about this, and he educated people who came to him that real yoga means to be Krishna conscious. That's the real meaning of yoga. It's time for a book which could be written. I suggested a title, someone can write it. I'm not going to write, I'm busy with some of the other books. But a very good book for, just like at this Bhakti Fest, a very good. Well, the Nectar of Devotion would be a great book to distribute. There. But one book, Pure Kirtan, Pure Bhakti. And defining what is the difference between just singing for the pleasure that you get in doing so, and kirtan actually means to glorify Krishna. That is the meaning of it. It doesn't mean just some chants which you do for your own pleasure, or because it makes you feel good. The actual meaning of kirtan, and that the pleasure that you get from acting for Krishna's pleasure is far more than anything you can experience from simply, as Prabhupada says, the sensual, mental or intellectual level in that famous speech that Srila Prabhupada gave on chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So yes, we should preach these things. It's not enough to go among a bunch of neo-Mayavadis who are talking about love and peace and all these things and going on with their sense gratification and encourage them to chant Hare Krishna. It's not enough. To encourage them to chant offensively may not help them. We have to educate them. I mean, that's our whole job. I mean, I've been living in India all these years, and especially I was in Bengal, where the culture of chanting Hare Krishna is very strong. So simply to encourage people to chant Hare Krishna is not enough. You have to educate them to stop eating fish, which is widespread in Bengal. You'll find people that chant Hare Krishna and go home and eat fish. You have to educate them practically everything, because their concepts are so mixed up. What is the meaning of a guru? What is the meaning? What is the difference between offensive and pure chanting? And it took some time. But now many people are. I mean, when I first went to Bangladesh, it was highly difficult to find a vegetarian in the whole country, even though so many people were chanting Hare Krishna. So we don't get that. In the Bhakti Fest, I would think almost everyone attending there is a vegetarian, but they have they're highly mixed up with Mayavad. So we have to educate, otherwise they're chanting Hare Krishna, it won't help them much. Bahujanma kare jadi shravam kirtan tabun napai Krishna padi premadam. They won't get the actual result of chanting if they're offensive. They have to know what the real thing is. So, yeah, we should educate them.
So Maharaj Prabhupada was famous for his approach of in like a pin, out like a plow.
In like a needle and out like a plow. Yeah, sometimes he did that.
So if we stay...
Not always. Not always.
If we stay in the needle position...
Yeah, we shouldn't always be a needle, yeah.
Then...
Yeah.
Like a needle, out like a needle.
Or it's also not good to be in like a plow and out like a needle. That's also that. It's not that we're so brash in our preaching that we just get bashed. Some intelligence has to be there. Yeah, anything else, please, before we finish? Oh, so many questions. Yes, please. No, what's your question?
Oh, thank you, Maharaj. In living in a Christian nation, or amongst several...
Yeah, somewhat Christian.
Yeah.
It's a mix of Christianity and paganism, isn't it?
Yeah. What should our...
Heathens. We're heathens. We're all going to burn in hell, according to some.
It's often to find so-called Christian games where they show
Christian games, that game
attraction to
game in the modern world means computer game, doesn't it? Generally, is that what you're talking about?
Generally, like you, I'll play your game and then you become a Christian. Basically, that's what I'm.
Oh, you're talking about social games.
Yeah, they like show interests and then towards the book, and then use that as an opportunity to preach and have confrontation amongst.
Oh, I see.
They come up to you and then they say, "Oh, what is your religion?" And then you start telling them, they're like, "Oh, tell me more." And then later, then they say, "Oh, I'm a Christian. Give all this up."
I see.
Right?
It's the preaching technique.
Yeah, that's what they do.
My question, Maharaj, is how much time we should spend
with people like that as little as possible. I mean, that's the general experience if you're distributing books, right? Isn't it?
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Then when they say, "Well, actually, you should become a Christian," you say, "Okay, very good. Would you like to take the book?" And no, so I just say, "Okay, have a good day. Have a great day. Have a great day." In America, in England, it's a good day. In America, it's a great day. So have a great day, and do whatever you can to move on to the next. So, All right, try to make it coherent, because the last time you asked me a question, I couldn't understand what it was.
Oh, actually, one of the other fellow Bhaktas helped me answer it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I want to point out an insight, and it's the fact that we live in a place where there's a deep ingrained sense or attitude of arrogance. So, for instance, in the news lately, when Obama publicly announced his support for building a mosque in New York, one of the comments from one of the leaders here was that we don't want...
Leaders here means where? In San Diego? In America?
Yeah.
ISKCON San Diego?
One of our leading, or one of the leading political leaders here. I think.
You mean in America?
Yes.
Okay.
Said that, and I quote, we don't want some monkey religion, being built upon, our
sacred ground.
Yeah, sacred ground, right. So, yeah. So the point being that his statement reflects, the common attitude of many, as you say, WASPs. And me as an American, but not a WASP, I have to deal with this dynamic, because I'm already placed as, inferior, So if we're going to preach this message of Krishna consciousness, we have a big obstacle in dealing with that arrogance. Because if someone thinks, India, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, they're thinking third world, backward, primitive.
Well, I tell you what, you surrender to Krishna and be blissful, and whatever the bodily designation may be, when you're blissful and filled with the confidence of being protected by Krishna, then your own hang-ups and those of others will be dissolved. And having said that, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We'll finish there. Yeah.